Right. Let's talk about Elon's rocket, which rather unfortunately blew up.
Sorry, family-friendly show.
What did I say?
Elon's rocket.
Yes. No, it's all good. It's all good. Starship.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep, no, all good. Before I do, God, I'm also dying here. That's also the other thing. The Assyrians, Part 3. If you sign up to the website, there is the long-running series on the Assyrians that Bo and Carl are doing at the moment. They're actually off at the British Museum today, filming the last one on location. So that is going to be absolutely superb. So check out that series. Okay, so. Elon's rocket. Let's have a quick look at this. This is the rocket that went up on 420. Play from here. So if you're watching the
it's about 40 stories.
Yeah.
Looks like the thing they sent Optimus Prime back to the moon with.
Yeah. So it clears the launch pad and off it goes up into the sky. So it cleared the launch tower, which was actually the primary objective. This is still a relatively early test. It got past something called MaxQ, which is basically when the maximum dynamic pressure it exceeds the point of the fluid total pressure, which basically means that the acceleration force was dropping out against the air pressure going down. So if you can imagine driving along in a car with your hand out the window,
right?
As you accelerate, the force on your hand gets pushed back. But if you were doing it straight up, the air pressure would also be dropping. So eventually those two would level out.
Right.
So the maximum point on those two parabolic curves is max Q. So it is the maximum amount of stress that a rocket can experience as it goes up. So it got past that point. So it was a very successful test, and they got terabytes of data that came out of it before it hit this next bit, which will improve the rocket for future test flights before it becomes commercially viable. But then this next thing happened.
Yeah, Kate, right now it looks like we saw the start of the flip, but obviously we're seeing from the ground cameras the entire Starship stack continuing to rotate. We should have had separation by now. Obviously, this does not appear to be a nominal situation.
Yeah, it does appear to be spinning, but I do want to remind everyone that everything after clearing the tower was icing on the cake.
And for those listening, there was now a big bang in the sky. So it did clear the launch tower. It went up. It got very high, but it did not separate. It started to spin, and the onboard self-destruct mechanism was activated, which was probably a good idea because otherwise, some nice old Mexican lady could have got a 400-foot tall rocket weighing 5,000 tons come through the apartment window at Mach 11. So
it was meant to crash land in the Atlantic Ocean at some point, just to be recoverable, wasn't it? But that's if everything went swimmingly.
Yeah, that didn't happen in it. But look, this is still huge news. This is what this really is. This is a giant step forward in the test process that will lead to a step change in orbital launch cost and capability. So what I mean by that is that this thing, Starship, when it is fully up and running, will be able to deliver into space at least 100 tons up into orbit, and it will be able to do it at a cost of about 2 million, marginal cost to get it into space. Now, you compare that to the next best thing, which is Elon's previous rocket, the Falcon 9. That cost about 15 million to get 17 tons up into space. So basically the cost to get a ton of something into space has come down from about $1 million per ton down to about $20,000 per ton. So it is a significant reduction in cost and a significant increase in capability. It's certainly well beyond anything that that NASA or the Russians had ever achieved with their program. And the reason why he's able to get costs down so low is because he builds in reusability into his rockets, whereas everybody else designs theirs to basically just a single use. It'd be like if you can imagine the cost of an airline ticket if your 747 was destroyed when it got to the other side. Let's just recap on the previous rocket to show, the remarkable engineering that goes into this. So let's play this one. This is a clip of the previous rocket, which is at a further stage in its development. watching a rocket land on a ship in the middle of the ocean. The ship and the rocket are completely autonomous.
That's mad.
It is absolutely remarkable. You can now send the rockets up and land them on a ship. And where they are looking to get to is the big ones, the starships. They will go up and they will basically dock themselves back into the landing tower.
Right. I think the reason for this as well, why this is being pursued, is because it will become commercially viable, not just when you can launch multiple tons into space, but when you can bring multiple tons extra weight back because you can get asteroid mining. And of course, if he is looking to evade Chinese manufacturing capacity capture, the only place that he's going to be able to build his Teslas is by mining asteroids for all the rare earth minerals.
Well, that's definitely a step or two further down the line.
But I'm sure Elon's thinking about it.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I didn't even sort of put it in that context. I mean, my sort of commercialization thoughts are much more in the immediate that, for example, another one of his companies is Starlink, which puts the sort of low Earth orbit satellites. So because they're low orbit, they have a longer lifespan and they will drop out the sky sooner. But that won't matter now because he can send these ships up and he can launch them. And he's put out sort of a sort of example video where one of these things will go up and it just like a Pez dispenser will just shoot these satellites out. So what that means is that he will absolutely dominate the data infrastructure going forward, because he will have these very low latency data communication web covering the entire Earth apart from the North and South poles. And that will, I mean, just no one else will be able to compete with that. The existing infrastructure companies like, the telecom companies, they will not be able to compete with it. They cannot afford, I mean, they don't have the technical expertise to do any of this. So Elon Musk is going to end up owning pretty much all of data. The other thing that it's going to do is long-haul aero freight is going to disappear because you'll do it on rockets instead, and you may well get people adopting it for point-to-point human transportation as well. Because at the moment, you get dozens of flights going from, say, London to Sydney, and it takes 23 hours. With something like this, it will be site to site within 45 minutes. Yeah. And it will take somewhere between 500 and 1,000 passengers. The only difficulty is you're going to have to try and find a way to stop people trying to get out their harness and float around a bit at the apogee of the arc. But it's only a 45-minute journey, so you won't have airplane food any longer as well. So that will be very cool. And of course, the more significant thing is because the cost to get stuff into orbit, the space infrastructure will start to expand quite rapidly now. So we're talking sort of more data infrastructures and data centers and other things will start being installed in orbit as well. And then I have watched various podcasts from people who really know what they're talking about, describing all the benefits that will bring. Didn't fully understand it, but I'll watch it a few more times and I'll see if I can relate that back at some future point. But apparently good things are coming from this. And also this thing, well, not this thing, but the one we saw at the beginning, it is the largest rocket that mankind has ever created, and it will be the technology that we use to get to the moon and Mars, or I should say, it will be the first time we've been able to return to the moon since we had 1960s technology. Because of course, that definitely happened. Not getting into that one. All I'm saying is that in 1961, President Kennedy was in a Cold War arms race, and he made this promise that we're going to go to the moon, and then a government program delivered that within 8 years. Without going over budget and on time, which of course happens all the time with government programs. But anyway,
shame we didn't live to see it.
Yeah. So, but it was on TV, so it definitely happened. So yes, it was the first time that we'd be able to return to the moon since we had 1960s technology. So yes, it was a big success. But something did go wrong because it did blow up. So let's talk about that. Let's have a look at these. These are the Raptor engines. Now the Starship, it has 37 of these, and if you are listening, these engines are about twice the size of a person. They're absolutely enormous, and there was 37 on them. And so what do we think actually went wrong? Well, let's go to the next image. So this is the launch pad that Starship went up from. Now, what you're seeing here is, this is the bottom of the launch pad. That used to be a concrete concourse.
Right, so it just incinerated all of it.
Whereas now, what you're seeing is basically a big muddy pit. And you'll notice, if you look at that base, that's about 20 or 30 feet of reinforced concrete.
Yeah.
In the 11 seconds it took for the rocket to clear the launch pad, 30 feet of reinforced concrete evaporated. So quite a bit of thrust and heat was going down. It sort of dug that very big hole at the bottom. Now, probably what happened is even though most of the bits of steel and concrete were blasting out of the sides at rather high speed, some of it must have ricocheted back up into it. Because if you look at the footage as it first goes up, there are several engines out already and probably more damage. So that's probably what caused the rocket not to fully complete its program. But nevertheless, it was a big success. But nevertheless, the media reaction was absolutely joyous, particularly the ex-Blue Checkmark Brigade on Twitter. They were absolutely delightful at it. All these rich and famous people who can't afford £8 a month to keep their blue check mark. They were absolutely delighted with it. I could show some of those, but this being an audio-visual show, I thought it'd be more interesting to show one of the typical news pieces. So let's go to Canadian TV, where the guy is very smug, but unfortunately he's talking to somebody who actually knows what he's going on about, because he's chatting to Chris Hadfield, who the former commander of the International Space Station. Let's watch this.
Not what the company or NASA perhaps were hoping for. SpaceX putting on a brave face. You heard all that applause. Calling it a successful failure does raise some questions, though, about NASA's timeline for a planned return to the moon. Discuss more. Let's bring in Chris Hadfield, Canadian astronaut extraordinaire, former commander of the International Space Station, author of The Apollo Murders and the upcoming book, The Defector. Hey, Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And yeah, you say people are putting on a brave face. You have it completely wrong, Todd. This was an enormously successful test flight. I used to be a test pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force and the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force. This was a terrific day. We learned an enormous amount, and it really bodes well for the future.
So tell me, because at first glance, Chris, people see a rocket taking off and it blows up, and they think, that doesn't seem like a success, though. But walk us through why it is.
Well, the first flight of the F-14 crashed. The first flight of the F-16 wasn't even supposed to be a flight. It went out of control and the pilot barely limped into the air. The Wright brothers crashed more times than you can count. One of them almost killed Orville Wright. People don't normally see test operations. They just see like airlines and expect everything to be perfect. But this was the very first orbital attempt of the biggest rocket ever built, 33 engines, a vehicle that can give us capability we've never had before. And at the end, you say it explodes. I think they destroyed it on purpose. It's got destruction circuitry on it so that it's not a threat to anybody on the ground. I think they sent the auto destruct command to it, but they learned so much before that. So yeah, it may have looked to the untrained eye that this wasn't what they wanted. This was enormously successful and really paves the way toward what's coming next.
So I do love the defensive body language of that Canadian news anchor when he realizes that the segment really isn't going the way that he thought it was going to go, and he starts sitting like that. Incredibly defensive body language. So that was fun. So yeah, lots of examples like that. The other one I thought I'd quite like to pick out is the Young Turks, because of course we've always got to make fun of them.
Favorite horse enthusiast, Cenk Uygur.
Yeah, was it Cenk who was into horse porn, or was it Anna?
It was Cenk.
It was Cenk,
yes.
Right, okay. So anyway, so the two of them get into this. Let's watch.
But can CBS relax for a second?
Yeah, look here.
You know what? This was a successful failure.
The successful failure lines. I mean, that's so corporate media.
It is.
Right? And you know what else was the largest of its kind? The Titanic. And if they were around back then, mainstream media would be like, well, to be fair to the corporation that owns the Titanic, it was a bit of a successful failure. I mean, they got it in the water and it did hit the iceberg. I mean, the iceberg also got damaged. Okay, so the spin is unbelievable. So these goofballs, the Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, et cetera, they build these rockets in the shape of penises. I mean, let's be honest, right?
I mean, but
the Bezos one is like, it's the most phallic thing I have ever seen.
What is Cenk's obsession with cock?
Well, look, the simple reason, Chunk, that a rocket is the most phallic thing that you've ever seen is because you haven't seen your own todger since you were about 11. You are so fat that you sweat while you eat. and that's why you have no idea what a proper phallus looks like.
I'd also just like to point out that at one point the Young Turks were very big, and they're still corporate backed, and their viewership has blown up pretty significantly. Yep. Particularly if you look at the dislike ratio that YouTube's had to hide.
Well, it helps that they get multi-millions from YouTube funneled towards. And where's our multi-millions YouTube?
Yeah, but that's fine. So you don't like corporations that deliberately fail, even though they're a success, but just because you've accidentally failed because you've destroyed all your credibility and are still getting corporate backing, you're okay, are you?
Yep. But now that's where I wanted to go with it. Rocket is ultimately a success on a journey. It was a test flight, and Chenggugu is fat. That's really the point I wanted to make.
We hope you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of Lotus Eaters. If you did, you can go over to our website where you can get the podcast in full, uncensored, and for free every day. And also, if you'd like to pay us as little as £5 a month, you can access all of our premium content. For example, Dan's series, Broconomics, where in this episode he goes through ARK's big 5 investment ideas for the future of technology. If you'd like to find out the rest of the content that we're putting out, you can follow us at LotusEaters_com on Getter and on Twitter. Until next time, goodbye.